From is the story about seemingly regular human beings getting trapped inside of some alternate nightmare dimension. Usually how they end up here is driving down a road and coming across a fallen over tree, as well as having a murder of crows flock above them. So I find it surprising that they decided to open up the trailer for season 3 of From with all of the residents not only gathered around the cemetery, similar to how we see in the very first episode of the series, but we also see crows as they now surround the residents. Sure, this could be symbolism for a dark omen and misfortune to befall the residents, or this could be a direct tether or connection to how people either end up here or things end up changing within this pocket dimension. But I also believe there's more clues spread throughout this trailer that could hint at the actual ongoings behind why exactly Fromville exists in the first place. How's it going, everyone? MudLuv here, usually covering different shows and movies, and today we're going to be breaking down the season 3 trailer for From. Wait, is this season 4? And it looks like it's going to be a pretty wild season. We'll go ahead and start with our main man, Boyd. He's visiting his wife's grave, as we've seen him do throughout the series, and he's opening up how things are changing for him. Now, for those that don't remember, Boyd's leadership was pretty uncontested for the beginning of the series. However, with Tabitha's escape and return, as well as Fatima's pregnancy and murder, Boyd was pushed to his limits. And when Elgin fell under the entity's influence and possibly sowing the seeds for a new civil war down the line, you could check out my theory video on that, Boyd is now torn between both doing what's best for the townsfolk and doing what's best for his family. This season should be following a darker Boyd, forced to make tougher decisions. But what if what he's saying to his wife's grave here could also be alluding to whatever could have happened down when he witnessed the rebirth of Smiley in the caves? It's likely he will keep what he saw a secret to spare Fatima's already lasting trauma that we can see she's still dealing with throughout this trailer. We also have to remember that she apparently saw the residents and how they became monsters in the first place. We also see Donna, who last season was slowly broken down to be a much more timid version of who she once was. See, in the beginning of the series, it felt more like Boyd and the townsfolk versus Donna in the colony house. But we see her confidence slowly dwindle, and now she's asking Boyd what exactly they could have saw down below with Senior Smiley. But Donna isn't the only one who could have problems with Boyd, as it seems tensions are returning with both Acosta and Boyd as well. See, now Acosta's an interesting character, because it seems a lot of the fandom, at least online, seem to really dislike her, which honestly, I personally don't get. I could make an entire video defending her character, but in reality, I feel it's pretty obvious she acted not only how any cop would, but how any newcomer entering this hellish nightmare town would actually react. Still, I believe narratively, it's good to have someone to hold Boyd accountable as a leader, because Boyd is definitely someone who would choose his family over the rest of the residents if push came to shove. We then catch back up to the Matthews, who are wondering where their father Jim could be. At some point, they seemingly become devastated over what they find in the barn, which I assume is going to be more than just some scary writing. This could either be Jim's corpse, or it could be a recreation of what happened to Kenny's mom. It's around here that Jade arrives, wanting to talk with Tabitha, claiming whatever the Onkui children showed them when they remembered their past selves likely was real. This somewhat solidifying the idea that some residents are actually reincarnations of previous people who were trapped. We see later that Jade is entering some caves and finds a little boy at some point, who I'm assuming is a regular human, if not a separate entity from the rest that we've seen so far, or at least from the monsters, because we have not seen any children monsters aside that one that knew Julie, and the only other supernatural boy we really see is the one in white. We also see, which I assume is from the same sequence, is Jade getting grabbed by said monsters within the caves. My personal theory for Jade's character is that he'll slowly lose his mind to the point where he can be influenced by the monsters or the entities, and this would lead to the massacring of the town, which has been alluded to since the beginning of the series. Which also could be what happened with a previous resident in Christopher, someone who Jade seems to be a reincarnation of. Speaking of these dark entities, Mariel explains that some seem to prey off of their suffering and they won't stop, which is another reason that's been alluded to throughout the show for why everything is happening. Though we still can't be too sure if we can trust her, as she's the only one of the cicada victims who haven't had much of a reaction. There's also a moment in season 3 where Elgin is taking pictures with the same camera that leads him to the entity, and at one point he takes a picture of Mariel. After seeing it, he has a somewhat concerned expression, and we never really find out what exactly he saw. This could lead to anything, but we do see that she's at some point strapped up in the same way she was when she was a cicada victim, with another struggling cicada victim in Julie going on her own journey. Seems she will go through this season not only worried about her dad, but also flying objects and poltergeist-like activity within her very own home. It's likely we'll see her adjusting to her newfound powers as a story walker, as we even see Randall and her visiting the same spot again. I believe this sequence will lead her directly to the night of the first season when Boyd was trapped within the RV. We did happen to see some strange things at that RV, including Boyd's dead wife trying to convince him of something. This same apparition is actually theorized to be an entity influencing the residents or just things in general. It looks like we'll be getting introduced into some new characters, that being both a priest and potentially his daughter. Seems a little late for the town to try to fill that gap that the previous pastor had before he died, but either way, they arrive and seemingly either with their own car or with potentially an ambulance they steal, crash directly into the police station. We see throughout this trailer how the girl seems to establish a friendship with Kenny. However, I for one do not trust her within the slightest, whether it be because she's a sweet religious person who could easily be manipulated like Sarah was, or because she herself is an untrustworthy entity working for the town in some way. I simply do not get behind the idea of her getting in close with Kenny, as compared to all of the residents, even with Boyd himself, Kenny is the one person whose mental state has remained somewhat sturdy, despite the many horrific things that's happened to him and the many losses he's endured. Honestly, if the entities of this place get off on breaking people, breaking Kenny would be one of their biggest victories. Someone who literally heard about his own mom dying and somewhat kept his composure. But if the entities were going to break a character like Kenny, the easiest way to do it would probably be through his heart. Throughout this trailer, we see a group of residents heading into the woods, likely towards the abandoned village we saw last season. A place where Jim and the others had heard what I thought was to be a giant spider walking around, only for it to be revealed within this very trailer to be some giant monster doll. We also later see a female version of this doll outside. I personally believe that this could be related to another shot in the trailer of the same crew uncovering said dolls next to the food they found last season. All of this could be a direct connection to the same totems we see around the village, but potentially also to the strange totems we see Randall carving. Either that, or they were created directly by the Man in Yellow, an antagonist that's been hinted at and officially revealed by the end of last season. The Man in Yellow, or his lackeys, seem to be visiting the town in secret to raise tension. We see later how he begins morphing and changing like Pennywise would until he becomes what I assume to be Jim Matthews, who we see by the end of the trailer. Likely trying to trick the residents of Fromville, but it does leave you to wonder, what exactly would he want with Ethan? Could Ethan potentially be the next Man in Yellow after all? I find it interesting that there's a shot of Victor burying some photos, and within this same sequence we see Victor's dad freaking out, with one of those drawings looking exactly like a recreation of what we see when the Man in Yellow seems to be morphing. We do later see how both Victor, his father, and Ethan end up finding the Man in Yellow's disregarded clothes. I believe all of this could be clues to explaining how exactly the reality warping nature of Fromville actually works. It's obvious it's not a governmental experiment, and there's some supernatural forces at play here. See, throughout the series, we've seen Victor reference how pictures can be both helpful and really bad, at some point wanting to destroy the drawings so he wouldn't remember anymore. We also know another character who enjoys drawing and tends to inadvertently predict events within the show is Ethan. There's a theory out there that this is all one big storybook and the characters are trapped within it, but what if in actuality, everything that happens within Fromville is a direct response to Victor remembering more and more throughout his time in the show? Every time he remembers something, something else changes within the woods or throughout the entities. Could this also mean that Ethan is the next iteration of whatever role Victor possesses now? And is it also very possible that the first boy to fill this weird role was actually the boy in white? Potentially, whether through witchcraft or whatever supernatural means, this boy and whatever he imagines could come to fruition within the reality they find themselves in, with potentially a new random boy who finds themselves trapped there also fulfilling said role to keep Fromville continuing. Now, is it also possible that at some point the boy to fill one of these roles was a darker, more evil person in general? Maybe someone whose fashion sense more aligned with the color yellow, and his twisted imagination brung to life all sorts of evil entities and demonic nightmares that most people can't even comprehend. This potentially leading to every new reincarnation of said boy in that role now suffering the man in yellow's nightmares and creating new nightmares themselves, with potentially the only moment people could stop this cycle being stopping either Victor or Ethan from letting go of their role or picking it up. Now, I know I've talked a lot about characters' roles, but we also know that some characters are reincarnated versions of others. We also know that some do have stronger connections to this place than others tend to. And we do know that both Ethan, Victor, the boy in white, and the man in yellow are all tethered and connected to Fromville in some strange way. So if anyone else has any alternative theories or suggestions they can add on top of this, feel free to let me know down below. Otherwise, hopefully we'll find out more answers by the time season 3 finally comes around. Wait, is this season 3 or season 4?
Okay, let's start with the tree you saw in the road.
She said it was a place that was everywhere, but you couldn't find it if you tried.
I always thought the town was the worst part. And then I went through the tree.
See, you were lucky. The sun was still in the sky when you got here. People came to help. Not everybody gets that. Those things out there, they like to hunt. They like to play.
Everybody here just talks about how afraid they are of dying.
They're coming.
I don't think that's the worst thing that can happen to you here.
There's darkness in the forest. Nightmares you can't even begin to imagine.
It's all just a dream.
Things we were never meant to see. Things that...
Said this place couldn't break. You don't fucking break me! That's what she said. Do you remember that part?
We don't have time for it. You think those things that come out of the forest at night did this? They're just the tip of the spear.
You can't go to sleep. Do you understand what I'm saying? Are you listening to me? The talisman will not protect you. There is nowhere that you are safe. No. No! Not do it.
That was a hell of a song.
Knowledge comes with a cost.